For today's lesson, we're going to cover two sections today. In fact, the first section, 2.5, is on continuity, and the second section, 2.6, is on really evaluating limits to infinity, but doing it algebraically. So first section, 2.5, is on continuity. We looked at continuous function, what it means for a function to be continuous in pre-calculus. In fact, it's similar to what we did in pre-calculus, although we're going to kind of take it a step further, obviously, in CIS Calc. A little bit more in-depth in proving why it's continuous. So we first start off with the definition of a continuous function. In fact, it says a function is continuous at a number a, so we're looking specifically at a value where it's continuous at, if, notice, the limit is equal to really f of a, which represents the output. And so we do a sort of a 1, 2, 3 check just to test continuity. And so down below you see these 3 steps. This is what we kind of encourage you. Make sure you're showing and demonstrating each of these steps in order to find or get full credit. But the first step is really to evaluate f of a. So actually just sub it in. If we get an output, we're on track for it to being continuous. The next step is to check to see if the limit exists. And if the limit exists, then we go to that third step and to see if really steps 1 and 2 are equal. If steps 1 and 2 are equal, then we'd say, by the definition of continuity, it's continuous at x equals a. So if we look at the graph below in example 1, really this graph is just a great example of when these 3 cases could fail at any given point. So if you look at x equals 1 here, the reason why it's not continuous, well, notice that f of a is not even defined. In fact, if you look at that, f of 1 does not exist here. It's empty at that point, and so really step 1 kind of fails, and so that's why it's not continuous right there. In x equals 3, as I approach 3 from the left, notice it approaches below the x-axis. We'll just estimate it at like -1, I guess. And notice if I approach 3 from the right, it's up at 2 maybe, if I were to estimate. So this tells me that the limit doesn't exist, but notice that f of 3 does exist. In fact, it's closed down there. So this is a case where step 1 is true, but the limit does not exist. They're approaching 2 different values, so that's why it fails here. At x equals 5, that last case, notice f of 5 does exist. It's right here. It's that closed circle. And notice as I approach 5 from the left, it approaches the same value as 5 from the right. So the limit exists. So in this case, step 1's true, step 2's true, but notice that the limit does not equal to output in step 3. In fact, we call this a removable discontinuity. Which leads me to the 3 types of discontinuities that we have and we come across in calculus. In fact, you might remember these from pre-calc. The first case, if you have some function like this, where remember if you factor the top, that factors into x minus 2, x plus 1, and on the bottom, x minus 2. Remember when factors cancel, that's when holes arise. That's what we call a removable discontinuity. So the first case is a removable. Anytime you have asymptotes involved, like in this next case, notice 1 over x squared, there's an asymptote right at x equals 0. Anytime there's asymptotes involved, those are called infinite discontinuities. The third case is another case of removable. In fact, this is a case where it's removed but also placed in a different spot. You're just defining it somewhere different. So that's another case of removable. But the last one, this is a step function we call it, and this is the case of where you have that jump discontinuity. You get to a case and it jumps up to another level and so forth. So there's 3 types of discontinuities: removable, infinite, and jump. We did a little bit more in pre-calc in identifying which type it was. However, in CIS Calc, it's really about proving whether it's continuous or not. So if we take a look at this example below, it says, let the function defined by this piecewise graph, is it continuous at x equals 3? Explain why or why not. So if we're going to prove continuity here, we have to do that 1, 2, 3 check. In fact, if you wanted to label it as 1, 2, and 3, that's perfectly fine. In fact, step 1, remember, is does, in this case, we're investigating x equals 3, does f of 3 exist? And if you're saying, if we're evaluating f of 3, we're going to evaluate it where it's equal to, and so notice it's equal to 3 when it's square root of x plus 1, and so f of 3 is going to be the square root of, by direct substitution, 3 plus 1, which is 2. So yeah, it does exist. So step 1's true. Step 2 is, does the limit exist? Now remember, if you're proving limits exist, you have to check both sides. And so we've already kind of seen the right side by direct substitution. As it approaches 3 from the right of f of x, that ends up being that top function, which by direct substitution we get 2. And the limit as it approaches 3 from the left, we're going to be using that bottom function now. And by direct substitution, if I sub in 3, I also get 2. And so the limit exists. They're both equal, and they're 2. And since these are the same, that the output equals the limit, I want to have that statement in the end, but step 3 is really that statement, whether it's continuous or not. So since the limit as x approaches 3 of f of x equals f of 3, f of x is continuous at x equals 3. And get a habit of sort of structurally writing that sentence at the end. And if it's discontinuous, the only difference is we'd say, since the limit is not equal to f of 3, then we'd say it's discontinuous at x equals 3. So the statement kind of the same every time, it's just a matter of if it's equal to or not. So there's 2 very important theorems in this section that are worth jotting down. In fact, Theorem 5 and Theorem 7 are 2 theorems that will help us later on in this chapter, as well as later on in the course when we're looking at other theorems and how to start problems proving continuity. Theorem 5 says any polynomial is continuous everywhere about its domain, about all real numbers. And that should make sense. If it's a polynomial, obviously it's going to be continuous. There's nowhere that it's going to be discontinuous. There's no places where it's undefined. But what's also important is that it also says any rational function is also continuous wherever it's defined. So again, whatever the domain is, it makes sense that it's going to be continuous about that same domain. So what Theorem 7 says, all these functions, you can state that all these functions are continuous if you state it's continuous on that domain interval. So example 6 here, it says, where is the function continuous? And we got a pretty complex function here that involves a few other different ones. It's really about finding the domain of this function and piecing it all together. Now, anytime you have a function that involves multiple functions, you kind of always want to go case by case scenario. The first case I always look at is the denominator. In fact, if you look at the denominator, that's a difference of squares. If you factor that, that becomes x plus 1, x minus 1. And if it's in the denominator, we can't divide by 0. So we know right away that x cannot equal 1 and x cannot equal negative 1. So let's keep that in the back of our mind. If we move to the next function in the numerator, we look at the natural log of x. If you remember what the graph of natural log of x looks like, it's the inverse of an exponential function. And so it looks something like this. In fact, natural log of x, the domain itself here has to be all positive numbers, and you can't take the natural log of 0. It's undefined. And so just that natural log of x function, the domain there is all positive values. And remember, in interval notation, we say that's from 0 to infinity. And lastly, looking at that tangent inverse part of this function in the numerator, the tangent inverse, the domain of that is really all real numbers. You can take the tangent inverse of any value. Remember, it pertains to a unit circle, but the tangent inverse, the domain there, is all real numbers. So if you kind of piece everything together, we know that it's going to be continuous about its domain. We know that it can't equal 1 and negative 1. It has to be all positive values. And really this last one here, it says all real numbers. Notice if it has to be positive values that it can't be all real numbers. It has to pertain to that domain, but also not including these values. In fact, -1 is out of the mix because it also has to be positive. So really the two things we have to piece together is 0 to infinity and it can't equal 1. And so if I kind of smash that together, that means everything from 0 to 1 works, not including 1, and then everything greater than 1 works. And so what I mean by works is the function exists at that domain, so this would be where it's continuous at. So if you have some questions in the homework asking if it's continuous or not, really determine what the domain is, and it's going to be continuous about that domain. This leads us to the intermediate value theorem, which is sort of the last theorem in section 2.5. The intermediate value theorem says, suppose f is continuous on the interval a to b, and let n be any number a, or any number between the outputs f of a and f of b. Then there exists some value c, such as f of n, f of c equals n. So really what this means is if you remember in pre-calc, what we used to do is we had a function. If we showed that the function is below the x-axis and then above the x-axis, so a positive value and a negative value, we used IVT to prove zeros exist. And if you remember in pre-calc, you looked at your table, you saw that it was negative values, then it all of a sudden changed to positive values. And the specific thing here is that the function has to be continuous in order for you to apply it. And so if you have a continuous function and you have one put below the x-axis, one put above the x-axis, then you can say there's a 0 between those two. So let's take a look at this example. It says show that there's a root of the equation 4x cubed minus 6x squared plus 3x minus 2 equals 0 between 1 and 2. So it's really saying show that there's a 0 between these two integer values 1 and x equals 2. Well, before we start, we always have to have some kind of statement that it's a continuous function. And if you remember those theorems that we looked at, Theorem 5 and Theorem 7, this is a polynomial. In fact, all polynomials are continuous about all real numbers because the domain is all real numbers. And so we can say that since f of x is a polynomial, then it is continuous. We have to have some kind of continuous statement first before we sort of apply that IVT theorem, which IVT really says if you find the outputs here, so if I find f of 1, so let's evaluate f of 1. Well, if I sub in 1, I get 4 times 1 cubed minus 6 times 1 squared plus 3 times 1 minus 2. And so if I evaluate that, looks like I get -1. So f of 1 is -1. And if I sub in 2 now, and evaluate, the first term, 4 times 8 ends up being 32, minus 6 times 4 is 24, plus 6 minus 2. Looks like I get an answer of 12. So notice that since we have a continuous function and f of 1 is -1 and f of 2 is positive 12, well, that means that there's got to be a root between x equals 1 and 2 because it's changing from a negative output to a positive output, below the x-axis to above the x-axis. So we could say by IVT, by the intermediate value theorem, there must be a root between 1 and 2. So here's your homework in section 2.5. Don't forget to reach out on the Canvas discussion page if you have any homework questions, but try the best you can and have a great rest of your day.